And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Tracy Lee, who during her near-death experience encountered beings in a blue light above her hospital bed. Tracy, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Tracy, can you please start on the day that your NDE happened?
I can. I think I have to start a little bit sooner just to put in perspective how I got into that situation. But I had gotten pregnant and had to go in for an induced labor because I had gotten preeclampsia. So they wanted to take the baby, get her out as soon as possible. And what had happened was there was a backup at the hospital and they couldn't get me in right away. And they had to immediately do emergency surgery and get her out as soon as they could by the time we got into the room. And during that procedure, they lacerated everything. I lost 9 pints of blood on the table. They lacerated my bowels, tons of things on the inside. And I woke up 3 days later from that, not really knowing what happened, what went on. I had a ventilator in me, tube down my throat, chained to the hospital bed. And when they thought I was doing well, they released me. They put me in a regular hospital room. Turns out I got contracted during that surgery, flesh-eating disease. The doctors, I had gone to them during the July 4th weekend. And if people don't really know much about hospitals, people who don't know much about hospitals don't know that July 4th weekend is actually the weekend where most doctors go on vacation. So they had the residents there and the residents were taking care of me, but no one had noticed that I had gotten an infection. So the infection had kind of spread and it was really, really bad. When the doctors came back from their vacation, they immediately sent me down to imaging, and I had gone through, by the time the NDE experience occurred, I'd gone through 9 surgeries. And the doctors told me around the 9th surgery, I had robot vacuum on me, I had debridements continuously happening. But by the end of the 9th surgery, I was laying in bed, and the doctors came in and they said, "We don't think you're going to make it. We're going to be honest with you. We believe it's time for you to call your family and friends in." Now, it was a very, very intense moment because at the time I am on a lot of medications. I'm hooked up to all these machines. I just had a baby. I barely even got to see her. It was a very difficult time and a difficult experience. And I had a very hard time wrapping my head around it. And that night, I had said to myself, I wanted to try to get better. And I woke up, and when I woke up, that's when the NDE experience had happened, where I looked up and I saw the blue light form above my hospital bed.
When you say woke up, do you mean that you were asleep and then you woke up?
So I would think it was 2 things. I had been very in and out of it because I think of all the medicines they had me on. They had me on as much Dilaudid as I wanted. They had me on anything that I wanted at the time. Tons of antibiotics. And I think that I was just in and out of it that way. But I was taking long bouts of naps in the hospital, as much as I could take in the hospital. So I had woken up from one of those naps. But when I had woken up, I was very much aware, more aware and alert than I had been since coming to the hospital. So that was a very unique experience because all along I had been very kind of out of it.
So you woke up and then you see how many beings above you?
So I woke up and I look up and this blue light forms on the ceiling. And I thought, okay, I'm on drugs. This is just a reaction to the drugs. That was my first thing. Everything's cool. But the blue light that appeared, it's very indescribable, very ethereal, but so there's nothing like it. It was the most beautiful feeling, the most, it was just, it wrapped me in it in a way, and it was just so comforting. There was nothing I've ever experienced like it. I can't even relate. The closest I can relate to like the blue color, I would say, is blue fire. That's the closest to, but there's no color that I can say or look at or show you that can equal the color that I saw. And that in itself was just an amazing experience. But as I'm looking up at this blue light, all of a sudden, approximately 3 to 4 beings appear in this blue light, almost like a cloud. And they appeared on the sides of the cloud, and they extended this light down to me, or this thread down to me. And no one ever spoke any words to me, but it was almost as if I already knew what was happening. It was almost as if they were in my brain and we were connected as one. But they never said anything, and it never sounded like they said anything to me inside of my head either. It was kind of, I already knew. It was just, we were connected on a different level. But they sent down this blue cord, that I called it, and they told me to suck on the blue cord, and it was going to give me life. But again, they're not actually telling me this, but this is what was going on. And the entire time that I'm doing that, and I was doing what they had said to me to do, and I was breathing in on this blue cord, and it felt as if it was about 15 minutes that this whole experience happened. It was only 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes that this was going on. But they tell me to suck on this blue cord, and I did that. And it seemed like as they were above me, they were kind of like working on me. It looks like they were busy doing something with their hands, and they were busy just, I guess, fixing me. And they didn't really, besides kind of communicating me to suck on the blue cord, they never actually did anything else or said anything else because they were busy. And I tried on numerous occasions interrupting them, and they just kind of ignored me. And I just kept sucking on the blue cord. But the entire time I was sucking on that blue cord, it was so calming. It was as if they were giving me my life back. And it was something that I had felt so just deflated, so tired, and I was ready to give up. And prior to the doctors coming in and telling me that, I'd had enough. My body had enough. I'd had numerous surgeries. And when I was sucking on this cord, I felt like I was getting my life back, and I wasn't meant to go. They were kind of helping fix me and get me better and get me to a point where I could then, survive and fight on my own. And it was just so empowering, so amazing, so wonderful. And it was indescribable, really.
What did the beings look like?
So the beings were they reminded me of gray aliens, but they were blue. But they were not that was the closest shape that I can say they looked like, but it was not 100% a gray alien form. But that was the closest that came about. Now it was very like smoky too, so it wasn't as if the forms were fully defined, but enough so that I could tell that they were beings. I don't believe they were human, or at least they didn't take the shape of a typical human being, but they were definitely beings of some sort.
You weren't frightened by them, were you?
It was the complete opposite. I was very much just calmed by them. I felt safe. I felt secure. I felt better than I've ever felt in my entire life. Um, I felt as if I was just in the best hands possible. They were, I almost, and at the afterwards, I almost felt as if they were my, what's it called? My guardian angel or my spirit, angels. And I just felt that they were there to do good. And it was so beautiful. It wasn't scary at all.
Was the hospital staff shocked at your recovery?
So the funny part is, if you remember, I had said that I thought there was only during this time where I'm sucking on this cord, I thought the duration of this entire experience was about 10 to 15 minutes. During that time, as I recall, no one came into my hospital room. No one talked to me, nothing. The next day, one of the nurses who had been on the shift during that time period when this was happening came in and said that they had numerous nurses and doctors come into my room and I was talking to the ceiling. And they said it occurred over an 8-hour period. For 8 hours, they were trying to get my attention. The doctors eventually told them to just leave me alone and just let her work through whatever's going on. And so I found that to be extremely interesting because I would have sworn to you that it was only a 15-minute time period of passing. But the next day, when all of a sudden I started eating, I was sitting up, I was able to talk to them, which again, I had this conversation about it being an 8-hour duration. They were 100% shocked at my recovery, how in a matter of, less than 24 hours, I am completely up, I'm talking, I'm eating. My fever had gone down. They took blood work later on in the day, and they said the levels had come down. So that was really surprising to me. But at the time, I didn't really know what happened to me. I kind of just thought I was hallucinating. But later on, as the days went on and I was still recovering in the hospital, I kind of thought that, something went down, because you don't just go from, hey, we suggest you call your family and friends in, to we think you're going to make a full recovery,
Did you tell them what you saw?
I did. And I told multiple nurses, and they basically rolled their eyes at me and said, oh, it's probably all the drugs you were on. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. It's all the drugs I'm on. Hey, that's just, the nature of the beast. And I didn't really, at the time, think much of it because, they then gave me my baby. I hadn't seen her in weeks. I'm now excited and not really thinking about that experience and just kind of brushing it off.
So how long did it take you to process this experience?
It took a very long time. And what started to happen was I couldn't get it out of my head. And part of the reason I couldn't get it out of my head was because afterwards I had such a long recovery. So during those times where I was in a lot of pain, I was down, I came out with drains. I lost my abdomen to the necrotizing fasciitis, the flesh-eating disease. I had numerous surgeries, that repaired everything from my bladder to my bowels. So it was a lot of recovery, and I wasn't on the pain medicines that I was on in the hospital. So you kind of felt everything. And during those times where the pain got really bad, I would think back to the moment of just that blue, calming, beautiful, light that fed life into me. And I would try to almost recreate that just to get that calming sensation. And I think during those periods, I would really I started to think about, what it meant, what it was about, what had happened to me. And I mentioned it to my therapist, who immediately, she's a very religious person, and I am not. I would define myself as, prior, I would have defined myself as 100% atheist. I believe in nothing. I believe we die, we go back into the soil, and we're food for Mother Earth, and that's it. And she is a very religious person. And she told me that when you see a blue light like that, it tends to be, I think it was the Archangel Michael. So she said, you might want to research that and, try to work through what you experienced. So I did, and there wasn't really a whole lot out there when I Googled it. When I really tried to research, and I'm a very good researcher, so I dug deep in the internet and different forums, and I found a few people talking about it, and then I found the Facebook group where there was a couple people talking about it, and I shared my experience in the Facebook group of what happened, and then I had a lot of people, tell me that you had a near-death experience, and here's, my friend had an experience similar, and the blue light meant this. And so that's kind of where it really began to unfold for me.
Where are you now on your spiritual beliefs?
So I 100% believe that they knew it wasn't my time, and that they came down to help me and to heal me, and that's what they were doing. They were healing me because I had unfinished business. I, had to raise my daughter, and I had a lot of struggle in my life with different things, and I think they really wanted me to protect my kid, my daughter, and that's why they um, helped me and healed me. Now, I would say that I am somebody who now believes, I do not believe that there's one God, but I do believe that there are higher beings now. I believe that this is just maybe one little step, and there are levels, and that is a whole other level. And I don't know what their job is, what their plan is, what they do, but I definitely believe that there are beings that are, not of this world. And, I believe that there's a higher power.
Was your experience just as real as you and me talking right now?
1000%. And first, when it first happened and I spoke to the nurses afterwards, I just brushed it off as, oh, it was the drugs. But the way that I felt that, the way that that cord came down, the way that that blue light hit the sky, hit the ceiling, and just appeared, and the way that I felt from that, there's no way that it was just from the drugs. It can't be. It was so real. And I don't believe other people could see it. I believe it was meant solely for me to see. But it was as real as me talking to you right now.
Since your experience, have you had any more paranormal experiences?
No. Well, actually, yes. One of the things that was really interesting was I actually had an experience another paranormal experience in the hospital, but I didn't think anything of that because this experience kind of surpassed that one. But when I was in the hospital room, and especially after the light came down, I felt as if there was a lady in my hospital room sitting in the chair next to my bed. Now, I didn't see her. I couldn't see her, but I could feel her. And she wasn't a negative presence. She was just there. And it was almost as if she was just there with me just to keep me company. And I thought in my head, because I do believe in ghosts and things like that, I thought, okay, this might have been an old resident of the hospital who had passed away and was just here to keep me company. And I was okay with that. It wasn't a scary experience. And she was there for several days um, after the blue light experience. And when I got home, she came home with me for a little while. And I remember her being in my bedroom in my corner. And even though I never saw her, I felt as if she was somebody who wore um, specific types of clothing. Like I felt as if she was a taller lady, a little bit bigger, who wore long skirts. Again, I never saw it, but I just felt that that was um, who it was, or that's what she was wearing. But after about a month or two, she just disappeared one day, and I never felt her after that.
Do you think it's
So,
possible it's a family member?
funny enough, so I had this conversation with my friend about 4 weeks ago. Never really thought anything of it because I just thought it was somebody who just followed me home from the hospital and who was just watching out for me. But I started to think back to my childhood, and I had a great grandmother who she passed away at 99 in the late 90s. But she wore, like, when I think of my great grandmother and I look back at the pictures, I realize that those were the outfits that she wore all the time. And I'm wondering if it was her there because even though again I didn't see her, I felt her. When I looked at her picture, immediately I was I was like, that's the lady who was with me in the hospital. So I think that it might have been her.
Have you noticed that you have any new abilities that could possibly seem like they're psychic?
I cannot express enough how much my intuition has absolutely just magnified. I've always had a very strong intuition, but it's to the point where and again, I don't see things in my brain. I don't hear things, but I feel things. And I kind of know when something has happened. I just know it. And that was something that I never really dealt with prior to this. And it's something that kind of occurs in my daily life very often now. So I'm not sure if that is related to it, but it definitely did not exist prior to going through this whole experience.
Besides what you have already mentioned, have you changed in any other ways?
I did. And I'll be very open with you. I was in a very bad domestic violence situation. And I think back and I think that may be why they were healing me, was to protect my daughter from the horrible situation. I had been stuck, unable to leave prior to it all going down. And after that experience, I was so empowered that I literally packed my stuff up and left and just created a whole life for myself. I found myself. I became a person who just was very independent, that just did everything on my own, that I found who I am. I am in love with myself. I am just a completely different person than I was prior to this experience. And I do believe that some of that is motherhood in general that kind of takes you to a new level. But I don't think without that and near death experience that I would even remotely have had the courage or, um, you know, the will to leave and become independent and um, just the strong person that I am today.
Has the memory of this experience faded over time?
A little bit. But it's not something that you can really forget because it was so soothing, so comforting, and that feeling is I've never felt anything like that. I mean, the closest that I can get to describing it is if you've ever sat or laid in a warm sun and the sun kind of wraps itself around your body. Similar to that, but just the warmth that resonated from the blue light, the just comfort is not even close to what the sun can give you. So that's something that you can never forget. And I would love to experience that again because it was just so beautiful and amazing. So in that respect, I cannot at all forget it. And I don't think that I can't remember every moment of the things they were doing when they were above me or what they were putting into my mind when they were talking or communicating with me. I don't remember all of those things, but I will never forget sucking on the cord and feeling better with each breath that I took. And I will never forget the light itself and the comforting feeling that it gave.
Do you fear death at all?
No, no. Um, and I'm not sure if my, you know, I did prior to going into the hospital, I definitely feared death. But I'm not sure if I don't fear death now because I got necrotizing fasciitis and like I've been through it all, or if I don't fear death because these beings I know are there waiting for me or are there to guide me and to help me. I think it might be a combination of both. Like, yeah.
Has your experience inspired you in your life in any way?
I think it inspired me to be the best me that I could be because you only get, limited chances here on earth, and being so close to death, I think really made me realize that not that I was a bad person at all. I just had a lot of codependency traits and I couldn't be alone and just I wasn't the best me that I could be. And dealing with that, I wanted to become a better person, and I have actively sought that out. And I was somebody who I never really had any self-esteem. I very much did not like myself, and I have come to love myself, and I have worked very hard to get to that point, and I really do think that inspired me to get there.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you up for that?
100%. I love talking about it. And that's actually another thing that I was not a very social person prior to all of this. I was very much introverted, and going through this, I just blossomed, and I love talking about my experience, especially to people who are very much into it because it's very interesting when you connect with somebody who has had a similar experience or who knows somebody who has a similar experience, and it's nice to feel connected to people. So I absolutely would love to talk to people.
All right, what's the best way to reach you?
You can reach me on my Facebook Messenger is probably the best way to reach me.
Before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
This is not it. This world and this life that we live is not the end. There is something afterwards, and it's something to look forward to, especially when you're somebody who doesn't necessarily have the best life, the best living situation. And just to know that fearing death is the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be embracing death when our time comes, but just to know that there's more out there, and there are beings and people looking after us and have our best interest in their minds, and we're in their hands, I think.
Tracy, thank you for that message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you very much for having me. I very much appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.